going to get in this business, we probably shouldn't give the internet rights to another company for a couple percentage points. And that's what caused us to keep evaluating whether we wanted to enter the business or not.
Antioco was born in 1950 in Brooklyn, New York. His parents are Italian immigrants, working-class practical people. His father works in a factory. His mother raises the kids. It's the kind of household where ambition isn't talked about in abstract terms. You work, you provide, you figure it out. Antioco absorbs that. He goes to New York Institute of Technology, then goes straight into retail. He starts at 7-Eleven as a management trainee at 20 years old, and he rises through the ranks to SVP. He then moves to Circle K, and he engineers the company out of bankruptcy, understanding the debt structure, negotiating with creditors, keeping stores open while the company restructures underneath them. He then becomes CEO of Taco Bell, and in July 1997, he becomes CEO of Blockbuster. He understands retail, he understands operations, he understands debt. When Hastings and McCarthy walk into the meeting with Antioco, they're walking into the room of a man who runs 8,000 stores. Netflix has no stores. Netflix has 300,000 subscribers. Blockbuster has millions of customers. Netflix is asking Antioco for $50 million.
Wanted to go to Blockbuster and sell them the company for, I think, a modest amount today, $50 million.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, in the early days, we were like, Blockbuster is going to wreck us as soon as we get big. And we were almost right about that. And so we went to see them, and you know, they were very polite, but they were not interested.
Mark Randolph was in Dallas that day, and he later describes what he saw in Antioco's face. Randolph says, his earnest expression slightly unbalanced by a turning up at the corner of his mouth. It was tiny, involuntary, and vanished almost immediately. But as soon as I saw it, I knew what was happening. John Antioco was struggling not to laugh. Antioco later disputes the characterization. He says he only stopped by briefly to greet the guests, but the broader point is there. Blockbuster looks at Netflix and doesn't see a threat. Reed Hastings much later says, if it hadn't been for their debt, they could have killed us. And that's the key insight. Blockbuster isn't just a company with stores, it's a company with debt, massive amounts of debt. When Viacom spins Blockbuster off in 2004, it leaves Blockbuster with crushing debt obligations. Every dollar that goes to building a competing digital business is a dollar that's not being used to service the debt. Antioco probably understands that DVDs aren't forever. He probably understands that streaming is coming, but he can't do anything about it because the company can't afford to invest in the transformation.
And I'm a sort of a obsessive guy, and I work real hard all my life. I really get into something, and I really delve into it.
Carl Icahn is a hedge fund operator, a financier, a man who buys companies and restructures them for profit. And to understand why he does what he does to Blockbuster, you need to understand where he comes from. Icahn was born on February 16, 1936, in Far Rockaway, Queens, New York. His father, Michael, is a cantor, a singer in a synagogue, who later becomes a substitute teacher and then a frustrated lawyer. His mother, Bella, is a school teacher. It's a lower middle class Jewish household. Far Rockaway in the 1940s and 1950s is a neighborhood where kids learn early that money is something you have to fight for. Icahn absorbs this. He goes to Princeton, not typical for a kid from Far Rockaway. He studies philosophy, not business philosophy. He writes his senior thesis on empiricism. He learns to think in systems, to question assumptions, to take apart arguments. After Princeton, he tries medical school at NYU and drops out. Medicine isn't for him. He goes to Wall Street. He starts as a stockbroker in the late 1950s. By the 1980s, he's become one of the most feared corporate raiders in America. A man who buys large stakes in underperforming companies, pressures management to change, and profits from the restructuring. He takes on TWA, he takes on Texaco. He isn't interested in building companies. He's interested in extracting value from companies that aren't maximizing their potential. In 2004 and 2005, Icahn turns that philosophy on Blockbuster. He buys a stake, he's been acquiring pieces. Buying options, buying shares, building a position. Icahn sees a company that's not producing enough profit. He wants cost cuts, he wants Blockbuster to maximize the profit left to extract before the model dies. Antioco wants to invest in digital. Icahn wants to cut costs and extract cash. They're in direct conflict. In 2005, Antioco makes a move that turns out to be exactly correct. He eliminates late fees. The customer doesn't have to worry about them. The incentive structure is now aligned with the customer's interests. It's the right move, but it costs about $400 million annually in lost revenue. Icahn isn't happy. And this is where the tragedy gets specific. Antioco understands the threat. He's trying to build Blockbuster Online, a subscription DVD by mail service to compete directly with Netflix. He's investing in digital infrastructure. He's spending money to transform the company. But every dollar going to digital transformation is a dollar not servicing the debt. And Blockbuster, after being spun off from Viacom in 2004, is carrying crushing debt obligations. Antioco probably understands that DVDs aren't forever, but he can't afford to invest in the transformation because the debt payments come first. It's a structural trap and there's no way out of it. By 2005, Icahn has forced himself onto the board. By 2007, he's forced Antioco out entirely.
You had asked me earlier, what were my greatest takeaways from that, 21-year history that I had at 7-Eleven. And I'd say it really came down to two things. One was an understanding that change is real, especially at retail. Just get over it. Things are going to change. The more you can embrace it, the more successful you'll be. And the other thing I learned at 7-Eleven is to be fearless, because you learn from your mistakes.
The company gets a new CEO, Jim Keyes, a convenience store executive who has absolutely no understanding of what's happening in digital entertainment. And Jim Keyes says something that tells you Blockbuster is finished. I've been frankly confused by this fascination that everybody has with Netflix. Netflix doesn't really have or do anything that we can't or don't already do ourselves. He also says neither Redbox nor Netflix are even on the radar screen in terms of competition. It's more Walmart and Apple. By 2010, Blockbuster files for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. The last Blockbuster is in Bend, Oregon.
I would love to say we're going to be here forever, but sadly, I think that there probably will be, a last day at some point, not anywhere in the near future.
A woman named Sandy Harding has been the general manager since 2004. By 2019, her store is the last Blockbuster in the world. When asked why her store survived, she says, "I think it's a lot of luck, hard work, my love of movies, love of my crew that works here, my customers, luck and love, not strategy, not capital." Meanwhile, Netflix is growing. To put this in perspective, in 2003, Netflix makes $6.5 million in profit on $272 million in revenue. 1.5 million subscribers, Blockbuster is generating $5.9 billion in revenue across 9,000 stores worldwide. Blockbuster is more than 20 times bigger. By 2005, Netflix has 4.2 million subscribers and $682 million in revenue. By 2006, that grows to 6.7 million subscribers. The company is doubling every 2 to 3 years. But Blockbuster is still a $5 billion company. It's easy to forget when you know the ending that for most of the early 2000s, Netflix was tiny. And the whole time, Netflix is taking note of everything Blockbuster is doing wrong. In January 2007, Netflix launches streaming. And the way they build it tells you everything about the company.
Well, in streaming, we have so many advantages that we actually don't have in DVD. Mostly that it's so compelling for consumers. Right. And now we compete in a much broader, we compete globally, right now just Canada, but we'll be expanding beyond that because streaming allows us to do that.
The man who leads the technology is Neil Hunt. Hunt has a PhD in computer science. He joined Netflix in 1999. Coming from the same pure software and rational software orbit as Hastings, he'd spent years doing research in computer vision and image processing at the University of Aberdeen and at research labs. At Netflix, he becomes Chief Product Officer, and he oversees every aspect of the user experience as it evolves from DVD rentals to streaming. He'll stay for 18 years until 2017. The first version of Netflix streaming only works on Windows. The picture quality is terrible. The catalog is a fraction of the DVD library.
You don't have to choose a movie and then wait for it to arrive. You can start watching immediately.
I want to tell you what's going on up here so you don't fret.
The initial streaming product is called Watch Now. It only works on Windows. You need Internet Explorer. You have to download an applet. You need at least 1 megabit per second of bandwidth and 3 megabits per second for anything approaching DVD quality. The standard $5.99 plan includes just 6 hours of streaming per month. The picture quality is poor, the selection's 1,000 titles compared to 70,000 available on DVD, but it's there and it's immediate. You click play and something starts. Not tomorrow, not after you wait for shipping, now. The original plan had actually been even more ambitious and stranger. Netflix hired Anthony Wood, the founder of Replay TV, to build a hardware device, a physical Netflix box that would sit next to your TV and download movies overnight for watching the next day. The team spent months developing it, but then YouTube exploded, proving that people would watch video over the internet in real time, and Netflix killed the hardware project. Wood took his expertise and founded a different company, Roku. The Netflix box that never launched became the Roku box that launched an entire hardware category. This is a fundamental shift in how people think about consumption. You're no longer planning to watch something. You aren't going to a store, browsing, making a deliberate choice, taking it home, setting aside time. You're simply clicking a button when you have 30 minutes and something starts. The friction is removed, the intention is reduced, the consumption becomes almost passive. Netflix launches streaming at a moment when the concept of streaming video is still theoretical to most people. Hulu launches in 2008 as a joint venture between NBC Universal, News Corporation, and later Disney, but it builds a fundamentally different business model, free ad-supported streaming with windowed content designed to funnel people back to cable television. Amazon starts with Amazon Unbox in 2006, a pay-per-view model that's clunky and expensive, designed to be a convenience for Prime members, but not a destination. Apple has iTunes, but that's transactional, and you buy episodes, not access to a library. What Netflix understands, and what Hulu and Amazon don't, is that streaming won't be revolutionary because people can watch anything instantly. It'll be revolutionary because people will eventually stop thinking about watching television as a deliberate act and start treating it like climate, something that's just there, a permanent part of their daily environment. That requires betting the entire company on a future that doesn't exist yet. By 2008, Netflix has nearly 12 million subscribers. DVD rentals are still the cash cow, still growing, still driving most of the revenue. The streaming library is still tiny, 1,000 titles in a catalog of 70,000, but Hastings has already made a decision that most of his executives think is insane. Spend heavily on technology infrastructure designed not for DVDs, but for a future where streaming will be everything. Build for the world as it might be, not the world as it is. But then in August 2008, a disaster strikes that turns out to be the best thing that ever happens to Netflix's technology. A major database corruption causes a 3-day service outage. Netflix can't ship DVDs. The entire system is down. The company is relying on a single data center, and when that data center fails, everything fails. This crisis triggers one of the most important infrastructure decisions in Netflix history, the migration to Amazon Web Services. It's a 7-year project. They don't just move their existing systems to the cloud, they rebuild everything from scratch. They break their monolithic application into hundreds of microservices.
So we've structured our systems as about 500 microservices. By decoupling the modules so that each team can push independently, we achieve a continuous deployment that gives us agility, gives us the ability to iterate faster.
They denormalize their data model with no SQL databases. They rebuild the entire architecture to be cloud native, designed for failure and recovery rather than prevention. The migration begins in late 2008 and isn't completed until January 2016, when Netflix shuts down its last remaining private data center. And then they build something even more remarkable, Netflix Open Connect. Instead of paying internet service providers for bandwidth, Netflix designs its own content delivery network. The core technology is a piece of hardware called an Open Connect appliance, essentially a server that stores and serves Netflix video content. Netflix gives these servers to ISPs for free. The ISPs provide power, space, and connectivity. In return, Netflix traffic stays local. It doesn't have to travel across the internet. By 2021, more than 1,000 ISPs have deployed these appliances, and Netflix has saved ISPs an estimated $1.25 billion in bandwidth costs. The system delivers 125 million hours of streaming per day. Close to 95% of all Netflix traffic is delivered through Open Connect. It's one of the most efficient content delivery systems ever built, and almost nobody outside the engineering world knows it exists. The video quality evolves too. Launch quality in 2007 is roughly 480p standard definition, grainy, not great. HD streaming arrives around 2010. In April 2014, Netflix launches 4K Ultra HD streaming, which requires 25 megabits per second and a premium plan. In 2018, Netflix becomes a founding member of the Alliance for Open Media and helps develop the AV1 video codec, a next-generation compression technology that delivers better quality at lower bandwidth. By late 2025, AV1 powers 30% of all Netflix streaming. But streaming creates a problem that's completely different from the DVD problem. With DVDs, Netflix owns the physical objects. With streaming, Netflix needs licensing agreements with the studios that own the content. The first 1,000 streaming titles in 2007 come from 20th Century Fox, Sony Pictures, MGM, Paramount, Universal, Warner Bros., New Line Cinema, and Lionsgate. The studios license second-run content, older movies, catalog titles, because they don't think streaming will threaten their cable relationships. It's pocket change to them. Netflix is small, streaming is a curiosity, nobody's worried. The first major licensing deal that matters is the Starz deal, signed in 2008. It gives Netflix the right to stream over 25,000 movies from Sony, Disney, and other studios that Starz has distribution agreements with. Netflix is reportedly paying around $30 million a year for access to this massive library. For context, that's a fraction of what the studios would charge if they understood what streaming was about to become. The Starz deal is the foundation of Netflix's early streaming library. It's why Netflix suddenly has recognizable titles. It's why the streaming catalog goes from a curiosity to something people actually want to use. But by 2010, the studios are starting to realize their mistake. They've licensed their content to Netflix for cheap. They've given Netflix years of license. Streaming is becoming valuable. The studios want to renegotiate. They want more money. Some of them want to launch their own streaming services. They aren't friendly to Netflix anymore. The decline of the Starz relationship is brutal. The studios have watched Netflix grow from a nuisance to a genuine threat to their cable and pay-per-view relationships. Netflix is cannibalizing their revenue. Film studios that couldn't imagine streaming would compete with theatrical releases now watch Netflix acquire subscribers at a rate of millions per quarter. Warner Bros. Starts considering its own streaming play. Universal wants to limit Netflix's access. Disney, with its corporate reach across television and animation and live action, realizes it holds the keys to massive content libraries that Netflix is now dependent on. The power dynamic flips instantly. Studios that were eager to monetize aging catalogs now see Netflix as a strategic competitor. What seemed like an endless supply of cheap content becomes leverage. In September 2011, Starz announces it won't renew the deal. By February 2012, the Starz content is gone from Netflix. An Epix deal signed in 2010, reportedly worth $1 billion total, gives Netflix access to Paramount MGM and Lionsgate titles. But that deal ends too in September 2015. The pattern becomes clear. Every major studio that can afford to launch its own streaming service will eventually do so. They're going to take their content back. The studios built Netflix's early subscriber base and market position, and then they're going to abandon it. The device expansion accelerates in parallel. In November 2008, Netflix launches on Xbox 360, the first streaming video app on a gaming console. It's a watershed moment because it proves Netflix can work on hardware beyond PCs. PlayStation 3 and Nintendo Wii follow, then Roku, which becomes Netflix's preferred partner for hardware distribution. By 2010, Netflix is accessible on over 200 devices. The strategy isn't to build hardware, it's to be everywhere. Smart TVs from Samsung and LG, Blu-ray players, set-top boxes, everything. Netflix is becoming the operating system of television, not by owning the hardware, but by existing on every screen. If you have a screen, Netflix wants to be on it. The company has become so ubiquitous that for millions of people, turning on the TV and turning on Netflix are the same action. The international expansion begins. In September 2010, Netflix launches in Canada, its first market outside the United States. It's a test case. Is Netflix's model portable? Can it work when you have to license content territory by territory, when broadcast rights are already tied up with local networks, when the catalog has to be rebuilt for each country? The answer turns out to be yes, but it's harder than anyone expects. A show that works in the US might not be available in the UK because the broadcast rights are already tied up with Sky or the BBC. The library has to be rebuilt for each country. But the technology is portable, the algorithm is portable, the binge-watching model is portable, and the brand, the red logo, the Totem sound, the Netflix and chill cultural shorthand travels across borders in a way that no entertainment company has achieved before. In September 2011, Netflix enters Latin America with simultaneous launches in Mexico, Brazil, and Argentina. Then in January 2012, Netflix arrives in the United Kingdom and Ireland. The licensing complexity multiplies with each new market. Netflix is no longer an American streaming company. It's becoming a global one. This is when Netflix faces an existential question. What happens when the studios take all their content back? What happens when Netflix is just a technology platform with nothing to stream? The studios don't just have piracy concerns, they have Netflix concerns. The fear that streaming is the new Napster runs deep. Netflix responds by implementing multi-layered DRM, digital rights management, using Microsoft's PlayReady, Apple's FairPlay, and Google's Widevine, depending on the device. They add dynamic invisible watermarking that embeds user-specific data to trace leaks. Despite this, Netflix still loses an estimated $1.2 billion annually to piracy, and high-profile leaks of content like The Witcher's Season 2 premiere continue to happen. But the real response to the licensing crisis isn't technical, it's creative. Netflix decides to make its own content.
Cable networks from all time have started on other people's content and then grown into doing their own originals. So we knew of the general idea for quite a while. Ted Sarandos, my partner at Netflix who runs content, got very excited about House of Cards. And at that time, it was $100 million. It was a fantastic investment, and it was in competition with HBO, and that was really the breakthrough that he picked right up front.
This is where Ted Sarandos becomes the most important person in the story. Ted Sarandos was born on July 30th, 1964 in Long Branch, New Jersey. His father was an electrician, his mother was a homemaker. He grows up in Phoenix, Arizona, and he works at a video store, one of the thousands of video stores that were the distribution mechanism for movies before Netflix existed. He isn't an average employee. He watches everything. He knows the catalog. He understands the connections between films in a way that goes beyond genre or star or director. He understands how stories connect to each other, what kinds of stories appeal to what kinds of people. He becomes a human recommendation algorithm in an era before algorithms existed. After the video store, he works in video distribution, Western Regional Director of Sales and Operations for East Texas Distributors, one of the largest video distributors in the United States. He learns margins, he learns licensing, he learns what moves and what doesn't. In March 2000, he meets Hastings. Netflix is still tiny. Sarandos joins as Chief Content Officer. His job is to manage the DVD catalog, negotiate with studios, curate the selection. When Hastings tells him that all entertainment will eventually come into the home over the internet, Sarandos thinks he's crazy. But Hastings isn't thinking about what people want now. He's thinking about what's possible.
I was blown away by Reed immediately. One of his early things he said was that every bit of filmed entertainment is going to come into the home on the internet. At that time, someone had emailed me a video clip from South Park. It would take 7 days to open it up. I mean, there was no the leap from that to the world he painted just seemed crazy to me.
By 2010, Sarandos understands that the licensing model is dying, the studios are going to take their content back, Netflix needs to own content, Netflix needs to make content. Netflix is about to write a $100 million check for a show nobody's ever heard of because their algorithm told them to do so. But before we start the original content story, we have to briefly dive into the Netflix culture and what makes it unique, because without it, the content strategy doesn't happen. The person who architects this culture is Patty McCord.
When Reed and I went to Netflix, the thing that we vowed to each other that would be different was we would actively control the culture as much as we could. We would be deliberate about it. We wouldn't let it happen. I will write down behaviors. Let's write down, like, if we say integrity, we need to say, this is what it looks like. This is what you act like when you have integrity. And this is what it looks like when you don't. And if you don't work here anymore. It's going to be that straightforward.
McCord was born in 1956 and grows up in California. Her father is a blue-collar worker. Her mother works too. It's not a household where anyone talks about organizational theory. It's a household where you work hard, you're practical, and you don't tolerate nonsense. McCord carries that sensibility her entire life, a fundamental impatience with corporate performance, with the rituals and pretenses that large companies develop to make themselves feel important. She studies communications and goes into human resources, a field most people in technology look down on. HR is the department that handles paperwork, but McCord doesn't see it that way. She sees HR as the place where you decide what kind of company you're actually building. She works at Borland International and at Sun Microsystems through the late 1980s and 1990s. She watches how companies grow, how they add layers, how the layers create distance between the people doing the work and the people making decisions. She watches talented people leave because they're frustrated by the bureaucracy, and she starts developing a theory. What if you just stripped all of it away? She meets Hastings at Pure Software. When Hastings starts Netflix, he brings McCord with him. She's been there since 1998. Over the next 10 years, Hastings and McCord develop what will become the Netflix Culture Deck, a 127-slide PowerPoint presentation. They develop it by experimenting. Hastings describes it: we would experiment, and then, if the world didn't fall apart, that would embolden us to experiment more. What they experiment with is radical trust. In 2003, they eliminate vacation policy. Instead of you get 3 weeks of vacation, they say take vacation, 2 words.
Unlimited vacation, is sort of like saying dress how you want, and then people still don't come to work naked. There's some cultural assumptions about appropriate clothing for work, and we don't need to specify that. And in the same way with vacation, people understand getting work done, and they get to live more flexibly.
The origin is perfectly logical. An employee asks why Netflix tracks vacation days when they don't track hours worked per day. Nobody has an answer. But here's what actually happens when they introduce unlimited vacation. Employees take less time off, not more. The ambiguity creates anxiety. Without a clear number to aim for, people don't know what's acceptable. They look at their colleagues and try to gauge the norm. In a competitive environment, the norm trends downward. Hastings has to step in and add actual guidelines to make the policy work, leading by example, making sure managers take visible time off, creating explicit expectations that people will actually use the benefit. This pattern, unlimited vacation leading to less vacation, isn't unique to Netflix. Kickstarter later abandons its own unlimited vacation policy after finding the same thing. A spokesperson tells BuzzFeed News, because it wasn't clear how much time off was considered acceptable, people were prone to not taking as much. They also eliminate the expense policy. Instead of approval processes, they say, act in Netflix's best interest. 5 words. They develop the keeper test. The question is, if this person told you they were leaving tomorrow, would you fight hard to keep them? If the answer is yes, you keep them. If the answer is no, you let them go with generous severance. Adequate isn't good enough. Adequate employees frustrate great employees. McCord describes the philosophy. Great teams are not created with incentives, procedures, and perks. They are created by hiring talented people who are adults and want nothing more than to tackle a challenge. The culture deck articulates what Hastings calls context, not control. Instead of micromanaging, you hire adults and give them context. The company's strategy, the market situation, the competitive landscape, and you trust them to make decisions that align with the company's interests without needing approval. It's radical because it requires 2 things most companies don't have: leaders willing to trust employees this deeply, and employees willing to take responsibility for decisions that matter. Netflix adds a no brilliant jerks rule. You don't hire people who are smart but destructive to the team. Talent is secondary to collaboration. It adds a sunshine policy where salaries are transparent internally. Everyone can see what everyone else makes. There are no secretive raises, no hidden deals. This is designed to eliminate discrimination and create peer pressure toward fairness. In theory, it's progressive. In practice, it sometimes creates resentment, not because the high-paid people are embarrassed, but because lower-paid people feel the system is rigged against them. The culture deck is so influential that Sheryl Sandberg calls it the most important document ever to come out of the Valley. More than 5 million people view it online, but the culture isn't universally positive. The keeper test creates a specific kind of anxiety. Netflix employees describe it as always auditioning for your job. The pressure to consistently be among the best leads to burnout. One documented incident when a PR manager organizes a collection for a fired receptionist, HR tells her it's not the Netflix way and not in the best interest of the business. In 2012, McCord herself is measured by the system she built. She leaves Netflix after 14 years. Her description is striking. We did it in a way where I had a lot of dignity, the company knew all about it, it wasn't a big freak out, I didn't disappear in the night. She also says, this sucks because I had been there a long time, but I wasn't surprised. If both parties agree the company's needs come first, then you can't be surprised. She later writes a book called Powerful about the Netflix culture. In it, she writes, Netflix culture wasn't built by developing an elaborate new system for managing people. We did the opposite. We kept stripping away policies. Now, the content. The decision to make original content is driven by necessity, but it's executed through a person almost nobody outside the industry has heard of, Cindy Holland. Holland is an 18-year Netflix veteran who becomes VP of Original Content. She's the executive who commissions House of Cards, Orange is the New Black, Stranger Things, The Crown, Ozark, BoJack Horseman, Making a Murderer, Narcos, The Queen's Gambit. She makes the Time 100 list in 2018. She's one of the most consequential content executives in the history of television, and most viewers couldn't pick her out of a lineup.